Hi guys, welcome to the news first. Today we have four very interesting stories from around all around the world, and the first story is gonna be started by Anael.
All right, then let's get going. I'll be talking to you about the new Delta variant. This variant was first reported in India and has become one of the four variants of concern identified by WHO, the World Health Organization. There's growing evidence that Delta is going global and has now become dominant in most countries. Thus far, we've been able to vaccinate up to 3 billion people around the world, but despite this, the growing dominance of Delta has caused the need of some concern. The strain is now spreading rapidly, seen behind new infections in nearly 100 countries, according to the World Health Organization. Delta, which is 60% more contagious than Alpha, which was first seen in the UK, seems to be fueling illness among young adults, according to one report. As of now, it's not clear whether Delta variant causes more deaths, and there's little available information. However, there are three main points to consider. Number one, WHO scientists say that more research is needed to confirm if Delta causes more severe cases than other known variants. Number two, there are signs that Delta strain could trigger different symptoms than other variants, namely Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. Number three, leading experts say Delta's super spreader status does not mean conferring its super virulence. On the contrary, there are signs Delta infections are less severe and cause lesser deaths, even as the virus becomes more fit. But here are some facts we do know about the variant. It was first found in the Indian state of Maharashtra in October 2020. It has become responsible for 90% of cases in the UK and 20% of cases in the US as of mid-June. It's associated with 64% increased chance of household transmissions in comparison to the Alpha variant first seen in the UK. It is more likely to cause hospitalization than the Alpha variant. Vaccines are slightly less effective against the Delta virus compared to the Alpha variant after 2 doses. Namely, Pfizer becomes 6% less effective and AstraZeneca becomes 1% less effective. Eric Liang Feigelding, who is an American public health scientist, currently a senior fellow at the Federation of American Scientists in Washington, D.C., posted a statement to Twitter saying, excuse me, fact, a virus is less lethal than before, example because of vaccination, or infects a lower risk / younger population, can actually kill and maim more victims if it's more contagious, #Delta variant, or allowed to spread more to more people, example football games, than if the virus were merely lethal. Prior variants of concern are the Alpha variant seen in the UK, the Beta variant seen in South Africa, and the Gamma variant seen in Brazil, never achieved this type of global dominance. This demonstrates the spread power of this strain. As of June 28, 2021, more than 4,400 Delta variant cases have been identified in the US, more than 60,000 in the UK, and more than 1,400 in Germany, and more than 7,800 in India, where it originated from. The growing dominance of the Delta variant is beyond doubt. It has been recorded in nearly 100 countries as of July 1st, and it's rising even in countries with high levels of vaccination. Another statement posted by Eric Liang Feigelding to Twitter says, anyone who doubts the #Delta variant wave is coming only needs to look at Israel and UK, two of the most heavily vaccinated countries in the world. Hospitalizations are increasing in both countries too. US is 1 month behind the UK, but US vaccinations are slowly. #COVID-19. Delta is responsible for most of the new COVID-19 infections in Australia, India, Israel, Russia, Singapore, South Africa, Indonesia, the Philippines, the UK, the US, and many other countries. In Europe, Delta is responsible for a new rise in cases after weeks of decline. But what's the evidence that Delta is a super spreader? In the UK, where the already highly transmittable Alpha variant first emerged, the new cases that are seen are 99% Delta, according to the Public Health England. The European CDC says that Delta will account for 90% of new coronavirus cases in the continent by the end of August. The US CDC reported that Delta accounted for 26% of new COVID-19 cases up to June 19th in the US. In Israel, Delta now accounts for 45% of new cases, though there's only been a small spike in cases by absolute number. Eric Topol, an American cardiologist, scientist, author, and professor of molecular medicine at Scripps Research, took to Twitter and said Delta variant, watched in the UK and Israel. UK 99% Delta, significant spike in cases, relatively small increase in hospitalization and deaths. Israel 45% Delta, small spike in cases by absolute number. Today, no change, 209, 0 deaths again, a little rise in hospitalizations, none in death. He also said, in California, the Delta variant is 30% of cases and vaccinations are fairly high, more than 61% population, 1 dose or more. Cases have started to creep up again, 17% in the past 2 weeks, and that's 62% less testing. So how can we help not spread the Delta variant? Well, health experts say mitigation measures such as social distancing, quarantines, and always wearing your mask will do. However, these are only temporary solutions, and you've got to get vaccine production and equity across the globe as quickly as possible, especially the vaccines that suppress spread and have a really high efficiency, said Dr. Topol. So that's my story about the Delta variant. What do you guys think?
So I think that right now the greatest threat would be the Delta variant, obviously, because especially for people like in India who haven't gotten vaccinated, since it can cause it causes more like serious illnesses than the normal than the other variants or like the normal, like the original COVID. So I think like it's more dangerous for people who aren't vaccinated, even though like if people like since the vaccine is only around 90% effective around the variant, which is what I heard, and that so getting the vaccine is still like not ensuring that you don't get the variant, but it's still better because the symptoms that you get later might be a little like less severe. So, but in India, like it's gonna be really bad because a lot of people don't have the vaccine yet because the population is so big that it's impossible to like vaccinate everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely, yeah. Hannah, Marion, anything to say?
Well, I think because now that's like fourth variant, right? So
yeah,
like we're pretty sure that another variant will come soon, right? And then because and this variant it's like still like less effective than the normal like COVID-19, and that means that we don't know if the next variant will be effective, like the vaccine that we're taking in. So, but because of that, I think it's really important to like finish all the vaccination first, which is really kind of impossible in a way that we have so many populations right now, and there are like really less companies who are making vaccination, and some companies and some countries are thinking vaccination as a way to make profit. So what we should really do is we should stop caring about profit, but rather than but then we should care more about like the pandemic that we're in right now, and get rid of the COVID-19 as soon as possible, so we don't get any more variants because we don't know what those variants will cause to our health. So yeah.
The thing is, I think companies are prioritizing richer countries compared to lower class countries because these are the countries that can't afford the vaccines. The rest of the vaccines that are given are usually ones that are near expiration date. I read a story the other day saying that I think Israel had offered, I think about 3 million near expired vaccines to Palestine. However, Palestine rejected them, namely because they were near expiration. Expiration, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think companies need to stop
like,
prioritizing rich countries.
But also the thing is like the countries that's like LEDC countries, they have more they're more like possible to spread their COVID-19, especially because maybe they don't have like lots of supplies, and because their medical supplies are really lack compared to other countries. So I really think those countries should be prioritized first in a way, but also some of the like rich countries because they're the ones who's making the vaccination. So I don't think there should be any like prioritization, but like,
Hmm.
you know, equally giving it.
There's
When you
also the
look at it
story
from,
that, oh,
no, go ahead, go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead,
There's
go
also
ahead.
the story that I was reading the other day. It was about like since India and UK have their own vaccine, the AstraZeneca. So I was reading about it, and like the AstraZeneca has been under like like well, it's been under like investigation to see like if it's actually like effective against preventing COVID and like the variants and everything. So yeah, in like UK they were just saying like people who have gotten the AstraZeneca, they're still getting COVID cases, and even in India, like they say it's 80% effective against the vaccine, but they're not sure about the statistics yet. So it's not just like that, they're just an LEDC, to be honest, in India. Like it's more like, and like I think they have the supplies and everything, but it's more about like them not being able to vaccinate everyone because of the huge population. And like, yeah, so I think they should just like focus on getting vaccinated instead.
Mm.
When
Providing
you
more
look at it, when you look at it from an economic standpoint, it is much more interesting for vaccinating the companies that make the vaccines to offer them to countries that can actually afford them, because a lot of the time when we're giving them to LEDCs, we're giving them for free. And that's usually through charitable offers like WHO and stuff like that. So it is much more interesting for these companies making the vaccines to offer them to richer countries like the US, the UK, part of Europe, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But also with the even if a country has the right, like they have the what's it called, the economy to actually have the supply of vaccines, some of them aren't able to have enough for the entire population because of the number of countries that need them. Like the situation in Europe, like France and Spain, although they are developed countries, due to the number, they're still in the older population, while compared to countries such as the UAE, where we're already starting to vaccinate like 12-year-olds. So it does show that, well, first of all, population does play a big big role in a big role in the spread of that vaccination, as you were previously saying. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's true.
And it also matters on like the population count, because some countries have way larger populations. Like you can't expect to vaccinate the entirety of China or the entirety of India in the same time you're going to vaccinate the entirety of France or the entirety of what's another, Italy, that kind of thing. So there's a lot to consider when you're talking about vaccines and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Should we get going with our second story?
Second story.
Well, let's go then.
Yeah, so the second story is about the fury in Ukraine after female soldiers were made to march in heels. So female troops were photographed practicing for a parade wearing high heels, sparking outrage among lawmakers. The Ukraine authorities have found themselves buried in controversy after official pictures showed female soldiers practicing for a parade in heels. Ukraine is preparing to stage a military parade next month to mark 30 years of independence following the Soviet Union's breakup, and the Defense Ministry on Friday released photographs of fatigue-clad women, soldiers marching in mid-heel black pumps. Today, for the first time, training takes place in heel shoes. It's slightly harder than in army boots, but we're trying, Cadet Ivana was quoted as saying by the Defense Ministry's information site. Several Ukrainian lawmakers close to Ukraine's former president, Petro Poroshenko, showed up in parliament with pairs of shoes and encouraged the defense minister to wear high heels to the parade. It is hard to imagine a more idiotic, harmful idea, a member of the other party pointing to health risks. She also said that Ukraine's women soldiers, just like men, risk their lives and do not deserve to be mocked. Ukraine has been battling Russian-backed separatists in the country's industrial east in a conflict that has killed more than 13,000 people since 2014. A deputy speaker of the legislature said authorities should publicly apologize for humiliating women and conduct an inquiry. She also said that 13,500 women had fought in the current conflict, and more than 31,000 women now serve in the Ukrainian armed forces, including more than 4,000 of whom who are officers. The choice of footwear sparked a torrent of criticism on social media and in parliament and led to accusations that women soldiers have been sexualized. The story of a parade in heels is a real disgrace, commentator Vitali said on Facebook, arguing that some Ukrainian officials had a medieval mindset. Another commentator accused the defense ministry of sexism and misogyny. High heels is a mockery of women imposed by the beauty industry. Yeah, that is a very short story by me, but I think it talks a lot about the sexism that takes place in the sexism that's taking place in Ukraine right now. And so, what do you guys think about this?
Well, you mentioned earlier that that they were mocking women, and in a sense, I'm not sure I 100% agree with that, because heels are seen as a symbol of grace, femininity, and all that stuff that you want. But I don't necessarily think that they were mocking the whole female gender. I think that they were mocking the women who were in the army, because heels in the army, they're in the army. They don't wear heels. How are they supposed to respond to army training in high heels? Like, it's extremely, I'm not trying to say this, but it's extremely unhealthy, because already we've had many claims that heels aren't healthy, because there have been reports that they damage your foot. Now making them walk a parade in heels.
Not just walking, but marching in a parade, like,
Marching, yeah. It's at that point where you're supposed to show off that you're proud to be in the army, and that's when you have your whole army uniform and you're marching with pride. You can't exactly do that in heels because they're uncomfortable. Heels are uncomfortable to your feet, and you can't do anything in heels except walk, let alone march,
Yeah. Like, I'm honestly, I don't really own a pair of heels, but I've tried to wear my mom's, and I find them impossible to walk in, let alone stand. But the fact that they're making, what was 4,000 troops, was it? I think.
Yeah.
Like, they're making all the troops, like female troops, march in heels is, I think, I mean, personally, I find it slightly insulting.
That's fair.
Well, yeah, obviously, like I agree with all of you guys saying, and especially because they're soldiers, like who are supposed to like protect the country, right? Or they like who do, yeah. So wearing heels when they're doing those jobs doesn't even make sense, and it's not even safe for them. And I don't think it's actually thinking them as a soldiers. Like that's what it meant by humiliating them, like in female soldiers. So yeah, I don't think this even makes sense. Like, no, yeah.
I think it just further like heightens the. I think why there's so much criticism is not because they're just wearing heels, but it's also because these like they're women who actually participated in that independence with the Soviet Union's breakup, which is why the parade is taking place. And like I said before, like there were 13,000 people, like women who had fought in that current conflict, and like making them wear heels just kind of shows that women can't do like women are meant to like they're kind of like putting them in a stereotype, like women are just there in the army just to show off, like they're I don't know,
pretty.
Yeah, that they're pretty.
Like they're not actually good, like taking actions.
They're like making them kind of look like dolls in a sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's making their job seem like a little more like cushiony in a sense. Like it's saying they're not doing as much as the men walking in boots. Like, because you can't do much in heels. You can walk well, fine, but you can't really run, jump, and do all that stuff that you would be able to do in boots. So I think it's undermining what women really do in the army, and that's what's equal to what men do in the army.
It's very ironic, to be honest, because I think women have had it harder, to be honest, in the army. Like when they like started going to army, because they wouldn't be accepted into the they wouldn't be accepted easily, like in the army, and think that they're very weak and like all that stuff. So I think the women have had it pretty hard themselves, and to be able to make it into that position and to be able to fight in like for the independence and everything, like I think it's just so amazing. But then like making them wear those heels just really undermines that whole everything that they went through, and like all that hardship
and everything that we've accomplished, that they've accomplished as women,
especially like in the 21st century now. Like it's been like you gotta like change the way you see like women and men and gender stereotypes and everything. So
yeah. Should we move on to our third story?
Yeah.
So moving on to our third story, I'll be talking about the heat wave which was recently reported in the British Columbia. So there were more than 230 deaths which were reported in the British Columbia since Friday, as a historic heat wave is brought brings in record high temperatures. The chief Connor Lisa has stated that due to the onset of the heat wave, the BC Connor Service has experienced a significant increase in the death reported, where it is expected that extreme heat has been contributory. The Connor Service normally receives about 130 death reports over a 4-day period. However, from Friday through Monday, at least 233 deaths were reported, which is roughly the double of what is usually reported. The chief adds that the number will keep on increasing as more data is recorded. This can then actually bring on the topic of climate change, as the environmental heat exposure can. Oh, sorry, my bad. So sorry. The environmental heat exposure can lead to severe or fatal results, particularly in the older people, infants, and young children, and those with chronic illnesses. The authorities reported a spike in the sudden deaths for Vancouver and nearby the Burnaby and Surrey. Officers have responded to more than 65 sudden deaths since the heat wave began on Friday, and that day alone, officers had responded to 20 sudden deaths as soon as 1:45 p.m., with more than a dozen others waiting for the police to be dispatched. The readings in downtown Vancouver were about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit on Saturday and 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit on Sunday, and 101.5 on Monday. The extreme high temperatures rates are very high on weather events, ranked by how much influence climate change has on them. The heat waves are becoming more and more common and more intense due to the warming climate, which then brings in the factor of climate change I had previously mentioned. The prolonged extreme heat in recent years has become unpredictable since the start of relatable instrumental records in 1895. Already, extreme heat is one of the deadliest types of weather-related events in the US, killing an average of 702 people yearly, according to the Center of Disease Control. There are more than killing in hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes in most years. So what do you guys think of this? Anaëlle, you're on mute. You're muted.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Okay, so thank you, by the way. I think this just puts in evidence climate change because, so this happened in Canada, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, it happened in Canada, and Canada isn't prepared for such hot temperatures. So houses aren't built to withstand such warm temperatures, causing the people to suffer and eventually die. I think this is just showing us how much climate change is taking an effect and how rising temperatures aren't affecting only the rest of the world, as in ecosystems and other animals, it's also affecting us. And I think people need to start worrying more about it.
I also think there's the fact that they're not used to the temperature. Like, for example, in Dubai, we're used to having really hot temperatures where the temperature can raise up to like 45 degrees, if not 50 degrees Celsius. So we're slightly used to it. Plus, we have the AC, which does help us to adapt. But we're used to these temperatures. However, if you go to Canada, where it's not necessarily that hot every year, it can cause a significant impact on the people.
Yeah, I think if our climate suddenly flipped upside down and all of a sudden it was snowing in Dubai, people would have a lot more trouble adapting than if suddenly the temperatures raised a couple degrees. However, I think the people in Dubai as well, if they didn't have the AC, we would also suffer quite a lot because, I mean, even if you say we are pretty used to high temperatures, which is true, we stay inside for all of the summer and we do have AC. So we have means of adapting. We have we have something to help us through it. However, Canadians don't always have air conditioning in their homes, which means that they had no means of adapting. They had nothing to help them.
Yeah, that is true. But also, if you look, like, there's a lot of workers in the UAE, and you can see them outside during the summer still working. So, okay, they're definitely a lot more adapted to the heat than we are due to their lack of AC. So but how do I explain this? But yeah, so it does show that they're not as easily influenced by heat than people in Canada, which aren't used to it.
Yeah, not just that, to be honest, but even if we the highest usually we go is like 30 degrees Celsius or like 30, 32, 33. But I think over there, like I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but I read it somewhere, and they went up to around 40, 42 degrees Celsius. And I think
sorry, I think in the UAE it does go up to 50 degrees Celsius.
We'd die.
No, it does. Like, seriously, just or I think there was the other day where I saw it's like 48, 49 degrees.
Generally, what the weather companies do is that they try to keep the degrees under 50, because at 50 degrees, workers have to stop working because it becomes inhuman to force them to work. So usually weather companies try to keep the temperatures under 50.
Anyway, so like just like Anna said, like even if like in Dubai we're all like accustomed to living with the 40 degrees Celsius, like because of AC and everything. But like even if we go out to walk, or like if we live without AC, we'd all probably die. And especially in Canada, like they're not used to living in the heat at all, to be honest. Like even in summer, like it's really cold. Well, not really cold, but cold for me. But they're like, it's normal for them. Like it's actually okay for them to live over there without like having AC and everything and fans. But living like all they have sometimes is heaters. Like I know my sister, she's in California, but not in Canada. Obviously, she's in California, US, and she had an apartment where she didn't have any AC, and because she didn't need it over there, like she didn't require it unless there was like a heat wave or something. And when the heat wave came, people usually just use their fans, and it's fine. But I don't think in US, because in Canada they weren't prepared for it, so they weren't. I think a lot of people they suffered because of that. So yeah. And so I think obviously because of the climate change and it's probably like because of the worsening climate. So yeah.
Yeah, I think this raises huge awareness in the climate change and global warming, especially because of COVID right now, people go out less than they used to, and even though like there's still like warm heat wave coming in, and this is saying that it's still a big issue, and that people should and it calls on people to take action and start to care about the climate change that's happening today, like right in the world. Yeah.
This reminds me of a conversation I had in physics class where we were talking about how the world would end if this continues. Would it be a heat wave that destroys everything, or would it be the world that would freeze over? And apparently it's a discussion that actually happens with scientists. I'm not entirely sure if it's true, but I did hear of that. So it's
likely, to be honest. It is quite a big concern.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our last story for the day.
Okay, so the last story is about the US companies hit by a colossal cyber attack. About 200 US businesses have been hit by a colossal ransomware attack, according to a cybersecurity firm. According to the Huntress Labs, the hack targeted Florida-based IT company Kaseya before spreading through a corporate network that used its software. Kaseya that it was investigating a potential attack, and Huntress Labs believes that a Russia-linked Rebel ransomware gang was responsible for this attack. The cyber breach emerged on Friday afternoon as companies across the US were clocking off for the long Independence Day weekend. Kaseya said one of its applications that runs corporate servers, desktop computers, and network devices might have been compromised. The company said it was urging customers that use its VSA tool to immediately shut down their servers. According to Kaseya, a small number of companies had been affected, but Huntress Labs said that the number is already about 200 and counting, and it is not clear what specific companies have been affected. The Huntress Lab said that this is a colossal and devastating supply chain attack. At a summit in Geneva last month, US President Joe Biden said he told Russian President Vladimir Putin that he had a responsibility to rein in such cyber attacks. Biden said he gave Putin a list of 16 critical infrastructure sectors, from energy to water, that should not be subject to hacking. By the way, the Rebel is one of the most prolific and profitable cybercriminal groups in the world, and the gang was blamed by the FBI for a hack in May that paralyzed operations at JBS, and it was also linked to a coordinated attack on nearly 2 dozen local governments in Texas in 2019. So yeah, that's basically all.
So what I think is that, this incident that you talked about, like, it's just because the hackers, they went after the software supplier of multiple organizations, and so a lot of, like, hundreds of victims were, like, affected in one go. And so that's what I think you mean by the supply chain attacks, if I'm not wrong. And so I think this is probably one of the biggest, like, instances happened with, like, ransomware. And so I think it just shows, like, how ransomware, like, these gangs that, who are hacking, they're thinking so creatively about, like, how to have the most impact possible, and yeah, how to get the biggest, money, or, like, the highest amount of money out of people. So
honestly, I find it quite incredible that I find the internet is just incredible. Not only have humans created an entire platform where you can get literally any information, they've also created a new form of crime. And I just find that really, really amazing, because before we had the internet, everything was stored on papers, everything was stored in files that you could physically hold. But now we deem it safer to store all these files, not only on paper, because I'm sure they have paper backups, but we also store them online. We also store them digitally. However, that's not necessarily safer, because storing them digitally leaves them exposed to cyber security. And that also depends on how strong the company's, like, firewalls are and all that techie language that I literally know nothing about. I just find that just shows off how amazing the internet is. We can literally find out anything, even information that we're not supposed to find out about. So that's my point.
Yeah, so, like, basically what, like, they're trying to, the aim is to, like, get money, right? And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to gain, so just in terms of more IT stuff, they're just trying to gain, like, the access to computer networks. And then when they get access to the computer networks, they're trying to hold the victims hostage to give them money, right? So, which is something that, well, it should require a lot of skill, but, like, showing that, a lot of gangs are not able to do this, it just shows, like, that where, like, the internet is not always safe, and, like, you should, like, obviously, like, take care of what you do on the internet, and, like, not go on.
Definitely. There are lots of stuff on the internet that we should worry about beyond just, like, people hacking into our computers. There's cyberbullying, there's catfishing, there's people logging into your Facebook account. There's all that stuff that's just terrifying about the internet, and yet we keep to use it because it's just such a useful resource. Honestly, the internet is a great place, but it's also one of the most dangerous places.
Yeah, and honestly, hacking, like, one person's, like, computer system takes so much time and effort. But the fact that they're able to hack, like, hundreds of people's in one go, by, like, getting, like, by focusing on one network, and, like, being able to affect, like, hundreds of victims who use the same network, it's just so crazy, because it just shows, like, the extent to which they can go to hack, like, some people. So, like, yeah, it's just
going up the food chain to find everything at the bottom. It's incredible. The internet. So is that everything for today, or do we have more points? Okay.
4 stories for today, everyone, and I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll be back next week again with some more interesting stories for you. Keep up.
We will.
subscribe. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Stay safe.
Bye. Stay safe.
Bye.
Goodbye.